What I'm going to be sharing with you today is based on a close reading I did my senior year at Dickinson College, and it's a close reading of two documents that were an exchange between Abraham Lincoln and William Seward in early 1861. And it's published on on Dickinson's House Divided project website, which is a database for K-12 students and teachers, as well as undergraduate students. Go ahead. No Secretary of State or cabinet member had ever, or has ever, submitted a document quite like William Henry Seward's April Fool's Day memorandum entitled Some Thoughts for the President's Consideration. The document was both critical and presumptuous with its assessment of Abraham Lincoln's first month in office and its list of recommendations that Seward believed would better serve the country in the midst of the secession crisis. However, the seemingly void of potential president successfully shut down Seward's recommendations on the same day he received the letter with an eloquent but firm response that clearly shows Lincoln's grasp of his role as president. He showed that he alone made the policy of the United States, and that if he felt the need to do so, could seek the advice of the cabinet, but that the cabinet could not do this job for him. Throughout his response, Lincoln methodically picked apart each of Seward's complaints and recommendations. He did this by quoting Seward's original letter and then offering a rebuttal to the Secretary of State's proposition. For example, Lincoln wrote, "First, we're at the end of a month's administration, and you say we are without policy, either domestic or foreign." He then asserted that throughout the first month of his administration, that he created policies which he believed Seward approved. The domestic policy mentioned by Seward and Lincoln is the controversial issue of federal forts in Southern territory. Leading up to April 1861, Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, and Fort Pickens on Santa Rosa Island, Florida, occupied the leader's attention. Although Seward and Lincoln agreed that a civil war should be avoided, the two disagreed on the best policy for reaching and finding what to do with the federal forts. In his memo, Seward stated that he wanted to transfer control of Sumter to South Carolina in order to appease the Carolinians and change the focus of the rapidly approaching war from a question of slavery and party politics to a question of, quote, union or disunion. Seward then wrote, "For the rest, I would simultaneously defend and reinforce all forts in the Gulf and have the Navy recalled from foreign stations to be prepared for a blockade. I would maintain every fort and possession in the South." Lincoln disagreed with Seward's hypocritical policy of giving up one fort but keeping control of the rest. He believed that refusing to give all forts in Southern territory to the belligerents and then reinforcing them with adequate supplies was the best course of action. He wrote, "I do not perceive how the reinforcement of Fort Sumter would be done on a slavery or party issue, while that of Fort Pickens would be done on a more national and patriotic one." In the end, Lincoln employed both secret and public efforts to resupply Fort Sumter and Fort Pickens in order to maintain federal control and keep the Confederates at bay. Ultimately, as we all know, the North was unable to hold on to Fort Sumter, and Major General Robert Anderson surrendered the fort after 33 hours of Confederate shelling. The second section of the memo complemented Seward's goals to prevent civil war through appeasement by starting war with the major European powers of Spain, France, Britain, and Russia as a way to unite the country under one flag. Seward's policies recommendations derived from the March 18, 1861 Spanish annexation of Santo Domingo, or modern-day Dominican Republic, French interest in Mexico or a plan to annex Haiti, and the possibility of Britain recognizing the Confederacy to protect cotton imports. Finally, historians are unsure of the reason behind Seward's call to seek explanations from Russia. One story is that according to his son Frederick Seward, his father referred to the possibility of Russia recognizing the Confederacy, but there are no primary source documents that attest to this theory. Lincoln's response to Seward's demands to start war with Europe in order to unite the country speaks for itself. The president completely ignored the suggestions to seek explanations from Spain, France, Britain, and Russia. Scholars ultimately disagree over the importance of Lincoln's response to Seward's Some Thoughts for the President's Consideration. According to some, the letter to Seward on April 1st constituted a significant turning point in the first month of Lincoln's presidency, because it was one of the first times he asserted himself as commander-in-chief to Seward, a veteran politician. Others downplay the significance of the response because it serves as just one of the many examples of Lincoln rebuffing Seward's attempt to strong-arm him. In any case, on April 1st, 1861, Lincoln clearly made his point because Seward eventually backed down. Although federal forts in Southern Territory continued to be controversial, no war was ever started with Europe, and Seward never again suggested the idea. Although the President and the Secretary of State maintained their own strong opinions, throughout their time in office, they were able to work closely together and had a strong trust in one another that allowed them to successfully maneuver the country through the Civil War. Thank you.